Rivet or pivot? That is the question.
My name is Ed Howie, and this is Howie Grow a Brand. If you like what you learned from this video, help us promote this channel by clicking the like button below and subscribing to our channel, Howie Grow a Brand. Ready to go? Let's get into today's chat. So let's talk a little about pivoting versus riveting. And I'm actually not going to go off, if you will, on the term pivot. I'm going to talk about pivot as far as what it does. I think my frustration with the term is that people were overusing it, not necessarily using it in the right way. And a pivot, actually my team and I were discussing this before the camera was turned on, was that, oh, well, is it one or the other is good or bad? Or is this really trying to explain why pivoting is bad? No, not at all. It's more about knowing what you're doing at the time and ensuring your team and your customers understand the relevance, the reason, and frankly, the permanence of the decision you made. And sometimes you don't know until you know. So let's be clear on what it means to pivot and what it means to rivet, okay? So in basketball, pivoting is when you stop and you do not lift your foot, but you redirect your position so that you have a higher probability of scoring based on the circumstance you're in, the play of the game. Okay, that's pivoting, okay? We're familiar with it. There is nothing inherently bad about pivoting. However, if you start at one end of the court and you go all the way to the end and all you do is pivot, are you going to actually score in enough time to win the game? Probably not. The key is be wise with your pivoting, all right? We, as business leaders, constantly have to assess the environment, determine our position on the court relative to our distance to the goal, and determine what is the fastest, best, most efficient way to score for our team, for our employees, for our family, most efficiently. And if you're still in business today and you were in business January of 2020 and you're still in business today, you need to stop, hit pause, and give yourself a round of applause, okay? Because there had been nothing easy about leading, running a business in 2020 and 2021. Now, what is a rivet? Well, think about an airplane. Now, I love to travel. I travel all over. I just love all that travel offers. However, there's certain things that I don't want to be reimagined every single time I get on the plane. And let me tell you, one of those things is the way the wing is attached to the plane. I don't want Delta or United reimagining how to attach the wing to the plane on every plane I get. Okay, so rivets are those little bolty screws that they're all in a line where the metal attaches to another piece of metal, that attaches another piece of metal, that attaches the wing to the fuselage. All that is the way that the wing is permanently affixed and attached, all the parts that make up the wing, so that big ass plane can get off the ground somehow, which I still don't understand how, okay? Okay, so rivets are permanent attachments. They're permanent connections. They are permanent expectations that you have for the materials of your brand to deliver what they're supposed to deliver. Those rivets are essential for that wing to stay attached, and I will tell you that your customer has certain things that they believe are essential to your brand, and they expect it every time they experience your brand. Let me give you an example. My beloved Chick-fil-A, all right? I rarely say anything negative about Chick-fil-A, all right? But I'm going to give you a perfect example of where pivoting can really mess up your customers. There's still a ton of Chick-fil-A's where the dining room's not open. Almost every other restaurant in the nation has opened up their dining rooms, but Chick-fil-A hasn't. And as a customer, I have no idea which Chick-fil-A has an open dining room or doesn't, okay? Because there's no logic to it, at least from the customer standpoint. And there's all kinds of reasons why I'm sure they haven't done it. But as a customer, if your first experience with your brand is today, How do they know, Chick-fil-A new customer, that your dining rooms have ever been opened if they've never experienced your brand until today? And how do they know if your restaurants are ever going to be open? And how do they know if they're pulling up to the next exit if they can actually pee in your bathroom or not, because they don't know whether your dining rooms are going to be open? All right? Now, there are all kinds of reasons why Chick-fil-A had to close their dining rooms, just like many other restaurants. And I'm sure there's all kinds of reasons why there's still some dining rooms not open. As a customer, I don't understand. And more importantly, it ticks me off because, like, if I want to go in and I'm planning my day and I'm 5 minutes ahead, I don't know because Chick-fil-A had to pivot, but the customer doesn't know restaurant by restaurant what the status is. Therefore, Chick-fil-A is confusing their customers, a very loyal customer base that has honored them with tremendous businesses, I can imagine, by counting all the cars over the last 2 years, especially. So the question is, Chick-fil-A, the question is, business leader, is your pivot a pivot or is your pivot a rivet? If you have had to pivot with some of their traditional expectations and you haven't shifted back to the way it used to be, then they believe the way you pivoted is now your rivet. They believe that the fact that Chick-fil-A's dining rooms are closed and over half of their restaurants still is that Chick-fil-A still no longer today does not have dining rooms. Because if the only Chick-fil-A they went into was a Chick-fil-A without a dining room open, then therefore the Chick-fil-A brand doesn't have dining rooms. So Chick-fil-A, is it a pivot or rivet? Because we don't know. The same can be true with your customers. You got to be clear with what is a pivot, meaning what is a response, and what is the things that your customers can expect every single time they experience your brand. Be clear, is it a pivot or is it a rivet? How do you determine whether it's a pivot or rivet, and how do you decide whether it's a pivot or rivet? There are 3 ways. One is you got to decide. You got to decide and be clear with your team the decision you make. This is temporary. This is permanent. This is what our brand stands for. This is how our brand has responded to the situation. Be clear with your team, because if your team is not clear on what the customer experience is supposed to be, then your customers are not going to be clear. Second is be clear with your customers. Chick-fil-A customer, we know that every other restaurant in the world is opened up, but we're still not. But that's okay. We're opening up on August 15th. Tell the customer what to expect. And third, be clear with your why. Chick-fil-A customer, our drive-thrus have been so overwhelmed with customers who love us, and we appreciate that. We're having to reconfigure the way we do our dining rooms, and we'll have that ready for you by August 15th. Be clear with what is the customer can expect, but tell them the why, because you have to assume that the customer experience I have today is the customer experience I'm going to have moving forward. While we as customers catalog every single experience we have, the most recent experience, it was what defines the brand for your customer. So if you have had to pivot the last 12, 18, 24 months, which we all have in some way, if you've had to reimagine how to stay in business, you got to just understand that your customers believe that's now how you do business. And maybe that is the best way to do business. But maybe they're waiting for you to go back the way you used to do business. Or maybe they have no idea how you're doing business because it changes all the time. Our brands must be riveted. They must be clear on what is a permanent expectation on your employees and your customers, that if I choose you as a brand, I'm going to get this because that is a brand rivet. Or I'm going to be amazed at the way you pivoted, but you're going to go back to the way it used to be, or you're going to keep it the way it is. Do not confuse your employees and customers with lack of clarity around what's a pivot and what's a rivet. And I would suggest that you better know what's the rivets of your brand, because those are the things that define who you are. They define your boldest, truest you. And the last experience every customer has with your brand is what defines your brand in their mind. And you better assume they see that as your brand rivets. Managing the pivots and being firm, bold, and steadfast, permanent in your brand rivets are essential to growing your brand. I hope this helps and inspires your day. If any of this works on your business this week, I'd love to hear about it in the comments, or please message me directly. Can't wait to see what we chat about on the next episode. We'll see you soon.